It starts without warning, a deafening crash that shatters the stillness of the night. Between 11:55 p.m. and 12 a.m., something inexplicable occurs in my condo. Every single night. I'm not talking about a faint creak or a soft murmur, I'm talking about an ear-splitting crash that sends my heart racing like a jackrabbit. And the most unsettling part? I have no idea what's causing it. As I tuck my kids into bed, refill the dog's water bowl, and bid my wife goodnight, I'm convinced that I'm finally getting some well-deserved time for myself. I retreat to my cozy sanctuary, ready to indulge in my beloved fantasy novels. But little do I know, the night has other plans. My daughter, with her unique spirit and special needs, has taken it upon herself to create a calendar. And not just any calendar, one that she's meticulously crafted, using duct tape to hold it in place. I beam with pride as I watch her work, but my admiration is short-lived. You see, this calendar has a mind of its own. Every night, without fail, it falls off the wall, leaving me bewildered and increasingly frustrated. Determined to put an end to this bizarre ritual, I decide to take matters into my own hands. I hammer a sturdy nail into the wall, securing the calendar in place. But as the clock strikes 11:55 p.m., the unthinkable happens. The calendar falls, and my heart skips a beat. I inspect the scene, only to find that the paper has ripped through the nail, leaving me aghast. I'm at my wit's end. I try again, this time using both duct tape and a nail to keep the calendar in place. Miraculously, it works, for one night, at least. But as I breathe a sigh of relief, a new and equally inexplicable phenomenon occurs. A drawing on the fridge, created by my child, falls off, shattering the calm of the night. The events that follow are nothing short of surreal. The calendar falls, and the drawings on the fridge stop. I'm trapped in a never-ending cycle of terror and confusion. I've assumed the universe is playing a cruel joke on me, and I'm powerless to stop it. And then, the unthinkable happens. I enlist my wife's help, asking her to witness the phenomenon while I'm at work. But when I return, I'm met with a revelation that shakes me to my core. Nothing falls when I'm not around. The universe, it seems, is watching me, waiting for me to make my next move. As I write these words, the calendar has fallen once again, a mere 13 minutes ago. I'm paralyzed with fear, refusing to intervene or tempt fate any further. The glitch in the matrix has become my reality, a constant reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved.
I'll never forget the chill that ran down my spine as I reached for the lone pair of socks buried beneath the mess of my cluttered room. It was a typical cleaning day, but nothing could have prepared me for what was about to unfold. As my fingers wrapped around the soft fabric, a sense of trepidation crept over me. Why? Because I was about to stumble upon a mystery that would shatter my perception of reality. The pair of socks I picked up read, "Sunday," in bold, orange lettering. I stared at them, my mind racing with a single, haunting question: how did I not remember owning two pairs of these identical socks? I distinctly recalled receiving this very pair as a gift from a distant relative, and I was certain I had never purchased another pair just like it. But, as I stood there, frozen in confusion, I felt an eerie sensation. It was as if the world around me had come to a standstill, and all that existed was the pair of socks in my hand and the ones on my feet. I slowly bent down to examine my feet, my heart pounding in my chest. And that's when I saw it. I was already wearing the exact same pair of Sunday socks. The same vibrant orange lettering, the same soft texture, the same everything. Panic set in as I frantically searched my memory for any recollection of buying another pair. But my mind drew a blank. It was as if these socks had appeared out of thin air, taunting me with their duplicate existence. I felt like I was trapped in some kind of bizarre, parallel universe where the laws of reality no longer applied. The more I thought about it, the more my mind reeled with questions. Had I somehow blacked out and bought another pair without remembering? Was I losing my grip on reality? Or was something more sinister at play? As I stood there, the Sunday socks on my feet seemed to mock me, their orange lettering burning with an otherworldly intensity. I knew I had to get to the bottom of this mystery, no matter how strange or inexplicable it seemed. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about myself and the world around me.
I'm still shaken as I recount the eerie events that unfolded last Friday, a day that will be forever etched in my memory. It was as if the universe had conspired against me, leaving me with more questions than answers. As I sit here, my heart racing with every keystroke, I'll try to piece together the inexplicable occurrences that continue to haunt me. It started innocently enough. I had parked my car in a quaint village, Espeley-Saint-Marcel, just a 10-minute walk from the charming city of Le Puy-en-Velay, where I was attending an event. What I didn't notice at the time was the ominous date, Friday the 13th. I'm not superstitious, but as the events unfolded, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. As I returned to my car, a sense of unease settled in. At first, I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but then it hit me. My driver's seat was higher than I had left it. Now, I'm a tall guy, and I always adjust my seat to its lowest position. It's a habit I've developed over the years, and I'm meticulous about it. But on this particular day, something was different. The seat was not at its highest position, just higher. The backrest and the position of the seat were the same, but the height had been altered. I was perplexed. My mind racing, I checked the rest of the car. Everything was in its place, the glove box, the trunk, nothing was amiss. The car was locked, just as I had left it. The rearview mirrors were folded in, a clear indication that the car had not been moved. I've had the car for 3 years, purchasing it second-hand from a dealership in Vienne, over 2 hours away. I was certain I didn't have any spare keys. The dealership had informed me that the previous owner had lost them. As I stood there, frozen in confusion, a chill ran down my spine. Who could have done this? And why? The only plausible explanation was that the previous owner or the dealership still had a set of spare keys. But why would they drive 2 hours just to adjust my seat? It defied logic. I'm not one to believe in paranormal activity, but as I stood there, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something inexplicable had occurred. I'm still searching for answers, but the truth remains elusive. I'm left with more questions than explanations. What do you think? Can anyone shed some light on this bizarre encounter?
It was a chilly autumn night in Long Island, New York. Around 11 p.m. I was driving home from a store in the Oceanside area, the dim streetlights casting an eerie glow on the deserted roads. As I approached a small plaza, a strange and inexplicable event unfolded, one that would forever be etched in my memory. I had just exited the store and was about to merge onto a short roadway, adjacent to a longer road lined with houses. The intersection had no traffic lights, only a stop sign at the second turn. I pulled up to the intersection, and to my surprise, 3 other cars converged on the same spot, all of us arriving simultaneously. The innermost lane, where I was positioned, allowed for 2 cars to turn at the same time, a common practice in this area. But then, something inexplicable happened. Without any warning or apparent reason, all 4 of us froze. Our cars came to a dead stop, and we just sat there, motionless and silent. We all sat there in our cars for at least a minute, but probably longer. No one honked, no one looked at their phone, and no external factors seemed to be causing this eerie pause. It was as if time itself had come to a standstill. I recall feeling a sense of unease and confusion, my mind racing with questions. What was happening? Why were we all stopped? I turned to glance at the woman in the car beside me, and our eyes met. She was staring straight ahead, her expression blank. I was about to break the silence, but before I could, it was as if we all simultaneously snapped out of this strange trance. I was the first to react, my voice breaking the silence. "What are we doing?" I exclaimed, my words hanging in the air. The woman beside me blinked, and then, as if startled, she accelerated her car and turned onto the longer road. The other cars followed, each of us departing the intersection as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. But something had happened. Something inexplicable and unexplainable. It was as if we had all been connected by some unseen force, a force that had brought our cars to a halt and frozen us in time. The incident left me with a lingering sense of unease and wonder. What had just occurred? Was it a glitch in the Matrix, a momentary lapse in reality? To this day, I remain puzzled by that bizarre incident on Long Island. It was a night that will forever be etched in my memory, a night that continues to haunt me with its inexplicable mystery.
I'll never forget the morning the city of London fell eerily silent. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and the cacophony of sounds that usually filled the air had been abruptly shut off. I walked down the bustling high street, weaving past pedestrians and market stalls, but the only sound I could hear was the soft thud of my feet on the pavement. The visual chaos was still there, people rushing to and fro, vendors shouting, or so I assumed, and cars honking, or not, but it was all eerily muted. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I walked past a group of construction workers, their mouths moving in animated conversation, but not a sound escaped their lips. The only noise was the creaking of the rusty scaffolding swaying gently in the breeze. I quickened my pace, my heart racing with a sense of unease. What was happening? Was I the only one who noticed? I glanced around, but everyone seemed oblivious to the strange phenomenon. As I turned a corner, I almost collided with a man who was standing still, his eyes fixed on his phone. He answered the call, and his voice cut through the eerie silence like a knife. "It's very quiet here," he said, his words sending a chill down my spine. How did he know? Was he experiencing the same bizarre phenomenon as me? I slowed down, watching as he stood there, his eyes scanning the surroundings as if searching for answers. The silence was almost deafening. I felt as if I was walking through a scene from a post-apocalyptic movie, where the world had been stripped of its noise and chaos. But it wasn't just the absence of sound that was unsettling, it was the feeling that something was off, something was watching us from the shadows. I quickened my pace, my senses on high alert, as I navigated the silent streets. And then, it hit me, it was as if the very fabric of reality had been tweaked, and we were all living in a simulation, a matrix-like world where the rules of reality no longer applied. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I felt like a character in a Philip K. Dick novel, questioning the nature of reality and my place in it. As I continued walking, the silence began to feel almost peaceful. It was as if the world had been rebooted, and all the noise and chaos had been stripped away, leaving only a sense of calm and tranquility. I slowed down, taking in the scene around me. People were still going about their daily business, but they seemed different. More relaxed, more at ease. It was as if they had been given a collective permission to unplug from the chaos of the world and simply be. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in, wondering if this was the start of something new, something revolutionary. Or was it just a strange anomaly, a blip on the radar of reality? I didn't know, but one thing was certain: I would never forget this strange, silent morning in the heart of London.
I'll never forget the ordinary day that turned into an extraordinary nightmare. I was on my way to pick up my husband and our kids from my mother-in-law's apartment, a routine trip I'd made countless times before, but this time something was off. As I climbed the creaky stairs of the old building, a shiver ran down my spine. The single staircase with its worn-out steps seemed to stretch on forever, like an ominous path leading me to a place I never wanted to be. I reached the third floor, rang the doorbell, and waited. My husband was supposed to come down, but instead, my mother-in-law answered, with my toddler by her side. We exchanged a few pleasantries, but my mind was elsewhere. Where was my husband? And what about our other child? I asked my mother-in-law, and her response made my blood run cold. He left with the other child, she said, her voice casual, as if she was commenting on the weather. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could he have left without passing me on the stairs? There was no other way out, no other staircase to take. I was convinced that I must have missed him, that I must have been distracted by my phone call, which I had been on as I walked up the stairs. But as I replayed the conversation in my head, I knew I hadn't missed him. I had been too engaged, too present. I rushed back downstairs, my heart racing with every step. And that's when I saw him, standing by the car, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. But I knew better. I knew that something was off, something that couldn't be explained. "How did you get here without passing me?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and confusion. His response sent chills down my spine. "I was still upstairs when you rang the doorbell," he said, his voice unsteady, his eyes wide with shock. We stared at each other, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. We had both used the same staircase at the same time, and yet we hadn't seen each other. It was as if we had become invisible to each other, slipping through the same space, completely unaware of the other's presence. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. How could this be possible? We were both in shock, grappling with an event that defied all logic. My husband told me that he had heard me talking to his mom near the exit door, but I knew that I had been on the phone, laughing and chatting, as I walked up the stairs. It was as if we had crossed into a parallel universe, one where we existed in the same space, but in different dimensions. The experience left us both shaken, our minds reeling with questions that couldn't be answered. We had caught a glimpse of the unknown, a reality that existed beyond the confines of our everyday lives.
It was a typical evening, or so I thought. I had spent the last few hours hunched over my desk, poring over textbooks and scribbling notes. The clock had just struck 10 p.m., and exhaustion was starting to creep in. As I pushed my chair back, a chill ran down my spine. Something was off. My heart began to pound in my chest as I realized that my trusty navy blue shorts, the ones I wore almost every day, were on inside out. At first, I thought it was just my brain playing tricks on me. But as I gazed at the peculiar sight, a sense of unease settled in. How could this have happened? I vividly recalled pulling my phone out of the pocket and placing it on the desk before starting my homework. The memory was crystal clear. My shorts were right side out, just as they always were. And yet, as I stood there, frozen in confusion, the pockets were now sticking out, taunting me like a puzzle with no solution. My mind was racing with questions. Had I somehow, in a moment of fatigue-induced madness, put my shorts on inside out without realizing it? Or was something more sinister at play? I frantically replayed the events of the evening, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. As I turned my shorts around, the green stripe that normally adorned the outside of the legs now stared back at me from the inside. A shiver ran down my spine. This was no simple case of a pocket flipping inside out when I removed my phone. The entire garment had been somehow, inexplicably, turned inside out. The more I thought about it, the more my confusion deepened. I had not removed anything from the other pocket, and yet it too had flipped inside out, as if by an invisible force. A sense of bewilderment washed over me, leaving me feeling like I was trapped in a surreal dream. As I stood there, frozen in the dim light of my bedroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that something inexplicable had just occurred. My trusty shorts, once a symbol of comfort and routine, had become a mysterious enigma, a reminder that sometimes the most mundane objects can hold the greatest secrets. And so, I remain, with more questions than answers, my mind still reeling from the inexplicable events of that evening. The mystery of the inside-out shorts remains unsolved, a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary-seeming world can hold the most extraordinary secrets.
It was a day like no other. A day that would leave me questioning the very fabric of reality. A day that started with an eerie fog that shrouded the streets, casting an unsettling gloom over the neighborhood. And then I heard it. A sound that sent shivers down my spine. The unmistakable roar of a waterfall, crashing against the silence like a behemoth awakening from a deep slumber. But there was a problem. It wasn't raining. Not anywhere, at least, not that I could see. The sky above was a dull gray, devoid of any clouds that could possibly produce such a torrential downpour. I was perplexed, my curiosity piqued. Where was this sound coming from? I had to investigate. As I ventured out into the fog, the sound grew louder, drawing me across the street like a magnet. And then I saw it. A group of trees, swaying gently in the breeze, their leaves rustling against each other in a soothing melody. But it was what was happening beneath those trees that left me agog. Water was pouring down, cascading onto the ground like a miniature Niagara Falls. I couldn't believe my eyes. The street around me was bone dry, not a single drop of water in sight. I reached out a tentative hand, hesitant to disturb the phenomenon, and felt nothing. No rain, no moisture, just the cool, crisp air. But the sound, oh the sound, it was almost deafening. I could see the water hitting the leaves in front of me, creating a mesmerizing display of light and sound. I was entranced, my mind reeling with the implications. How was this possible? Was I dreaming? Hallucinating? The experience left me with more questions than answers. But one thing was certain. I would never look at the world in the same way again.
I'm still shaking as I write this, and I'm hoping against hope that someone out there can make sense of the unspeakable terror I witnessed a few days ago in Bakersfield, California. It's a story that will sound like something out of a sci-fi movie, but I swear every word is true. I've been hesitant to share it, fearing ridicule and judgment, but I have to know if anyone else has experienced something similar. It was a typical day at Challenger Park, the sun beating down relentlessly as I drove by. That's when I saw it. A black SUV with tinted windows careening out of control, speeding toward the auto mall. My heart skipped a beat as I watched in horror, convinced the driver was going to plow into innocent bystanders. But what happened next defies explanation. The SUV seemed to be heading straight for the curb, ready to launch into the park itself. And then, in the blink of an eye, it vanished. Yes, you read that right. The vehicle simply disappeared. I'm not talking about a quick turn or a clever disguise. It was as if the SUV had been swallowed up by thin air. I rubbed my eyes, wondering if the heat had gotten to me, but I knew what I saw. And then a car behind me honked and the driver pulled up beside me. "Did you just see that?" he asked, his voice trembling with fear. "I thought I was hallucinating." We exchanged stunned glances, both of us trying to process the impossible. We weren't alone, it seemed. The driver, a stranger who introduced himself as John, told me he had been following the SUV from a distance, and what he saw still haunts him. "I thought I was losing my mind," he confessed, his eyes wide with anxiety. That chance encounter with John has left me with more questions than answers. Was it some kind of prank gone wrong? A clever illusion? Or something more sinister? I've been racking my brain, trying to make sense of the unsensible, but the images keep replaying in my mind like a nightmare. As I write this, I'm overcome with a mix of emotions: fear, confusion, and a hint of hope. Hope that someone out there has witnessed something similar, something that can shed some light on this bizarre incident. I know I'm not crazy, and I know what I saw. I need to know I'm not alone in this. The memory of that vanishing SUV still sends shivers down my spine, and I'm left with a haunting question. What really happened that day at Challenger Park?
As I stepped out of the restaurant, the warm sun on my skin couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that something was off. My wife and I had just finished a leisurely lunch, but the serene atmosphere was about to be shattered by a disturbing discovery. We walked towards my van, parked just 30 yards away, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. It started with a nagging thought. Something's not right. As I opened the door and slid into the driver's seat, my eyes locked onto the steering wheel. It was positioned at an awkward angle, blocking my view of the speedometer. My heart skipped a beat. I'm a man of habits, and my van is my sanctuary. Every detail, from the seat position to the steering wheel alignment, is precisely calibrated to my liking. But this was different. I knew I hadn't driven to the restaurant with the wheel in this position. That would be unthinkable. My mind racing, I replayed the events of the past hour. We had parked, locked the van, and gone into the restaurant. The horn had beeped, confirming that the van was secure. But now, as I sat staring at the steering wheel, a creeping sense of dread took hold. Had someone tampered with my vehicle? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. The steering wheel is adjusted manually, so it wasn't a malfunction. Nothing else in the van seemed out of place. Yet the wheel's position was unmistakable. It was as if someone had deliberately set it that way. But who? And why? The questions swirled in my head like a vortex. I thought back to our lunch. We had been our usual selves, enjoying each other's company. No one had approached us or seemed suspicious. We hadn't even had a drink, so it wasn't as if we were inebriated or distracted. And my van is always locked, a habit I've developed living in an urban area. As the reality set in, a chill ran down my spine. Someone had accessed my van, manipulated the steering wheel, and then locked it back up. The implications were unsettling. Was this a prank gone wrong or something more sinister? I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched, that someone had been inside my van violating my personal space. The experience left me shaken, my sense of security shattered. Even now, I'm struggling to make sense of it all. It was an isolated incident, but the memory of that adjusted steering wheel haunts me. I'm left wondering, what really happened that day? And more disturbingly, who was behind it?
As I turned left onto a familiar road, a sense of unease crept over me, like a whisper in the darkness. It was a summer day, the sun beating down on my windshield, yet a shiver ran down my spine. The streets were ordinary, the scenery unremarkable, but in that instant I felt a jolt of uncertainty. The words of an old children's song echoed in my mind, "And you're in someplace else." Little did I know, those words would become all too real. I was on my way to meet a client, a routine visit to a part of the city I knew relatively well, or so I thought. The southwest corner, where the city's borders blurred with those of neighboring municipalities, was not unfamiliar to me. Still, as I approached the turn, a nagging feeling of disorientation began to build. The left turn lane stretched out before me, and I merged into it with ease, just as the white van in front of me did. We were a procession of cars, all turning left, all following the same path. Or were we? As I made the turn, a strange sensation washed over me. The world around me seemed to shift. The van, the cars in front of it, all vanished. I was alone on the road, the only sound the hum of my engine. But it wasn't just the absence of traffic that unsettled me. It was the road itself. The shopping plaza, the businesses, the condo complex where my client waited, all were gone. In their place, a quiet suburban street of single-family homes stretched out before me, lined with manicured lawns and trees. I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. How did I end up here? I hadn't taken any turns, hadn't deviated from the route. Panic began to set in as I fumbled for my Google Maps app, hoping to find some explanation for this impossible detour. But the location on my screen made no sense. I was on the opposite side of the condo complex, in a residential area that shouldn't have existed where I was. A chill ran down my spine as the reality of my situation hit me. I had somehow crossed into someplace else. My heart racing, I carefully made my way to the condo, my mind reeling with questions. How did I get here? What had just happened? I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, telling myself it was just a weird glitch, a minor detour. But the experience had unnerved me, leaving me with a sense of disquiet that lingered long after I arrived at my destination. Even now, months later, I shudder at the memory of that detour into the unknown. It's a feeling I'll never forget, a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary journeys can take the most unexpected turns.
It was a typical evening, with the warm glow of the kitchen lights casting a sense of tranquility over the room. But little did I know, a mind-boggling mystery was about to unfold, leaving me shaken and bewildered. As I began to load the dishwasher, a sense of routine took over, until I placed a single baby bottle on the bottom row. It was an ordinary act, one that I had done countless times before. But as I closed the dishwasher door, a feeling of unease crept over me. Something didn't feel right. The cycle finished, and I opened the door to reveal a spotless interior, but my eyes scanned the racks with a growing sense of panic. Where was the baby bottle? I frantically searched every nook and cranny, my heart racing with each passing second. I must have made a mistake, I thought, trying to reassure myself. Maybe I never put it in the dishwasher in the first place. But deep down I knew that wasn't true. The baby bottle had vanished into thin air. The next day, I tried to shake off the feeling of unease that lingered from the previous night's events. I loaded more dishes into the dishwasher, trying to focus on the mundane task at hand. But as the cycle finished and I opened the door, my eyes widened in shock. There, sitting innocently on the bottom row, was the baby bottle. It was as if it had never left, but I knew the truth. It had been gone and now it was back. I felt like I was losing my mind. The discovery left me reeling, with a mix of emotions swirling inside me. I was relieved that the bottle had reappeared, but also creeped out by the inexplicable circumstances surrounding its disappearance. How could something so ordinary become so extraordinary? The experience had left me shaken, and I couldn't help but wonder if I was just a pawn in some twisted game of reality. The mysterious case of the vanishing baby bottle remained unsolved, leaving me with more questions than answers. As I stood there, frozen in confusion, I couldn't help but think about the fragile nature of reality. Was it possible that our everyday lives were just a facade, hiding secrets and mysteries that we couldn't even begin to comprehend? The encounter had left me with a newfound sense of awe and wonder, but also a hint of fear. What other secrets lay hidden in the mundane routines of our lives waiting to be uncovered? I knew that I would never look at my dishwasher or my life in the same way again.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the events that unfolded, and every time I think about it, my mind goes into a tailspin. It's as if I've stumbled into a real-life mystery novel, and I'm the protagonist desperate for answers. It all began a month ago when I made the bold decision to leave my parents' nest and start a new life in a different state. The thrill of independence was exhilarating, but little did I know that I was about to embark on a journey that would test my sanity. As I settled into my cozy studio apartment, I made sure to unpack my favorite possessions, including my trusty nude strapless bra. It was more than just a piece of clothing. It was my go-to confidence booster. I wore it to class, to run errands, and even to lounge around the apartment. But little did I know, our time together was about to come to an abrupt end. It happened on the second week of my new life. I wore the bra to class, took it off when I got back home, and carefully placed it in my underwear drawer. Or so I thought. The next night, I searched every nook and cranny of my 300-square-foot apartment, but it was nowhere to be found. I tore the place apart, my anxiety levels skyrocketing with every passing minute. Had I thrown it away with the trash? Had I misplaced it in a fit of exhaustion? The questions swirled in my head like a vortex, driving me to the brink of madness. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and frustration. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was losing my grip on reality. That was until I received an invitation from my parents to visit for the weekend. I packed my bags, still simmering with the mystery of the missing bra. As I entered my childhood home, a sense of nostalgia washed over me. I headed upstairs to visit my little sister, and that's when I saw it. The bra. My bra. The one I had been searching for. The one I had given up hope of ever finding again. It was sitting on her floor, nestled among a pile of clothes, looking as if it had been there all along. My heart skipped a beat as I picked it up, my mind racing with questions. How did it get here? Why was it in my sister's room? And then the bombshell. My sister's nonchalant admission that she had borrowed the bra from me, despite the fact that we're different bra sizes, and she had never set foot in my apartment. The room began to spin, and I felt like I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare. Am I going crazy? Did I really misplace the bra, only to have it magically reappear in my sister's room? The questions continue to haunt me, and I'm desperate for answers. What just happened?
It has happened to me not once, but twice. 2 instances that have left me bewildered, my mind racing with questions, and my sense of reality shaken. I'm still trying to make sense of the unexplainable. But the memories of those moments remain etched in my mind like a scar that refuses to heal. I was sitting on my couch, engrossed in a Sunday night football game, the clock ticking away into the 4th quarter. The home team was leading by 14 points, and I was convinced that the outcome was all but certain. But then, like a whispered secret, Scott Van Pelt's words pierced the airwaves, sending shivers down my spine. And when we return, we will talk with Rodgers on his winning drive and 17-point comeback. I felt a jolt of confusion, my eyes fixed on the screen as if I was witnessing a surreal dream. Why would SVP, a seasoned sports broadcaster, make such a statement when the game was still very much alive? I frantically texted my friends, also watching the game, my fingers trembling with anticipation. Did SVP just say what I think he said? I asked, my mind racing with possibilities. Their responses were as perplexed as I was, a mixture of confusion, skepticism, and bewilderment. I felt like I was trapped in a parallel universe, where time and reality were distorted. The game resumed, and the unimaginable happened. The Packers mounted an incredible comeback, scoring 2 touchdowns and kicking a field goal to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. I sat in stunned silence as SVP interviewed Rodgers after the game, just as he had predicted. I was left with a haunting question. Had I just witnessed a glimpse of the future? I tried to share this unsettling experience with my friends, but they had no recollection of SVP's enigmatic statement. It was as if I had imagined the whole thing, a product of my own fevered imagination. Even my wife couldn't grasp the magnitude of what I was trying to explain. I was left with an unshakable feeling of unease, like I was the sole witness to a cosmic anomaly. And then it happened again. During an NBA playoff game, I heard a commentator casually mention the final score, as if it were a fait accompli. The game unfolded, and the predicted outcome materialized before my eyes. I was left feeling like I was trapped in a Twilight Zone episode, where the fabric of reality was tantalizingly fragile. I'm still searching for answers, trying to rationalize these inexplicable events. Is it a form of déjà vu? A paranormal phenomenon? Or simply a product of my own paranoid imagination? I may never find the answers, but one thing is certain. I will never look at sports broadcasts the same way again. The unsettling prophecy has left an indelible mark on my psyche. A reminder that, sometimes, the most inexplicable events can be the most profound.
I still shudder when I think about that fateful day. It was as if the universe had decided to play a trick on me, leaving me with more questions than answers. The rain was lashing down, and the wind was howling like a pack of wolves. I gazed out the window, my eyes fixed on the greenhouse at the back of my house, when I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. The 5 bags of manure fertilizer, which had been sitting by the greenhouse for months, had vanished into thin air. I rubbed my eyes, wondering if the torrential rain was playing tricks on me. But when I looked again, the bags were still nowhere to be seen. The spot where they had been sitting was spotless, with only the brick path glistening in the rain. I felt a shiver run down my spine. What was going on? Had someone stolen them? But why? My aunt, who helps me manage the greenhouse, had been with me all day. She couldn't have moved them. Or could she? I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I had been planning to sow some seed trays the next morning, and now I had no fertilizer. I decided to wait until the next day to confront my aunt, hoping that somehow, some way, the fertilizer would magically reappear. But when I visited her the next morning, she swore she had nothing to do with the missing bags. I insisted that she was hiding something, but she just shook her head. I was baffled. Had I lost my mind? Was I seeing things? I trudged back home, my mind racing with questions. And then I saw them. The 5 bags of fertilizer sitting in the exact same spot where they had been for months. I couldn't believe my eyes. I walked around them, touched them, and pinched myself to see if I was dreaming. But I wasn't. The bags were real, and they had somehow reappeared out of nowhere. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what happened. Was it some kind of paranormal activity? Had I somehow moved the bags and forgotten? I've read stories about strange occurrences like this, but never thought I'd experience it myself. The incident has left me feeling shaken and intrigued. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm determined to get to the bottom of it.
I still remember the eerie feeling that crept up my spine as I gazed at the biscuit packaging in utter confusion. It was as if time had stood still, and my mind was racing to make sense of the inexplicable phenomenon unfolding before my eyes. The words paranormal activity flashed through my brain, but I pushed the thought aside, thinking it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. After all, there had to be a logical explanation, didn't there? It started innocently enough. My parents had returned from a holiday, and as is customary, they brought back a delightful assortment of treats for the family to enjoy. Among them was a tantalizing biscuit that I had devoured in a matter of minutes. I recalled distinctly opening the black packaging, taking a bite, and being instantly hooked on the crispy, brittle goodness within. But that was hours ago. As I walked back to the kitchen, my taste buds began to tingle at the prospect of finishing the biscuit. But what I saw next left me speechless. The packaging, once a sleek black, had transformed into a brown and yellow wrapper. I blinked, wondering if my eyes were playing tricks on me. I pinched myself, wondering if I was dreaming. But no, I was wide awake, and the reality of the situation was unsettling, to say the least. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I approached my dad, my voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, did we have a black packaging?" I asked, my eyes scanning his face for any sign of confirmation. But his expression was calm, almost amused. "No, son, there's only one packaging, brown and yellow, always has been." My mind reeled as I tried to process this information. I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had eaten. And yet the evidence before me seemed to suggest otherwise. I opened the packaging, my hands trembling ever so slightly, and my heart sank. The biscuit was mostly eaten just as I had left it. But how? The packaging was different. It was as if someone had switched it while I was away. I stood there, staring at the brown and yellow wrapper, feeling like I was losing my grip on reality. My dad's words echoed in my mind. There's only one packaging, but what if that wasn't true? What if there was something more to this seemingly ordinary biscuit? I couldn't shake the feeling that something inexplicable had occurred, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. But for now, the mystery remained, taunting me like a ghostly whisper. You didn't see what you think you saw, or did you?
As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The warmth of the bed and the stillness of the room enveloped me, lulling me into a deep slumber. But little did I know, something sinister was lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. An hour passed, and I woke up to a reality that was both unsettling and inexplicable. My gaze fell upon my torso, and my heart skipped a beat. I was no longer wearing my t-shirt, but instead, I was clad in a kurta, a traditional garment I had never worn before. A sense of unease crept in as I scrambled to recall the events leading up to my transformation. I vividly remembered removing my t-shirt and placing it beside me on the bed. But I had no recollection of changing into the kurta. Panic set in as I frantically searched my mind for answers. My eyes darted around the room, but everything seemed eerily normal. The door was still locked from the inside, and there was no sign of forced entry or exit. I was alone in my room, or so I thought. My friend, my only companion in the house, was nowhere to be seen. I called out for them, but there was no response. The silence was deafening, and I was left with more questions than answers. How did I end up in this unfamiliar garment? Who could have entered my room without my knowledge? And more importantly, why? The uncertainty was suffocating, and I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare from which I couldn't awaken. As I sat up in bed, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. The kurta felt strange against my skin, and I couldn't help but wonder if I was losing my grip on reality. Was I dreaming, or was this some kind of twisted reality? I had to know the truth. I threw off the covers and got out of bed, determined to uncover the mystery behind my transformation. But as I approached the door, I felt a chill run down my spine. What if I wasn't alone in the house? What if someone, or something, was waiting for me on the other side of the door? With a sense of trepidation, I reached out to unlock the door, my heart pounding in my chest. What would I find on the other side? Would I uncover the truth behind the mysterious kurta? Or would I stumble into a world of darkness and uncertainty? Only time would tell.
I'll never forget the day my world was turned upside down. It started like any other morning, with the warm glow of the sun peeking through my window and the gentle hum of the shower washing away the remnants of sleep. But little did I know, disaster was lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. As I emerged from the bathroom, towel dried and refreshed, I began my daily routine with a sense of normalcy. That's when I noticed it. My glasses, my trusty sidekicks that had been with me through thick and thin, were nowhere to be found. Panic set in as I frantically searched every nook and cranny of my bathroom. I ripped through my drawers, tossed aside my shampoo bottles, and even checked the absurd places, the trash can, the toilet tank, and yes, even the shower drain. But they were gone, vanished into thin air. I felt a cold sweat trickling down my spine as I replayed the events of the morning in my head. I distinctly remembered taking them off and placing them on the shelf. But now they were gone. A wave of anger washed over me as I scoured every inch of my apartment. I tossed aside couch cushions, rummaged through my kitchen cabinets, and even checked the fridge, because why not? But the more I looked, the more I realized just how small and limited my space was. It was as if my glasses had been swallowed by a black hole, leaving no trail or clue behind. My backup pair, a scratched up and worn out relic, glared at me from my nightstand. I snatched them up, feeling like a part of me had been amputated. I forced myself to put them on, trying to ignore the discomfort and the queasy feeling in my stomach. As I rushed out the door to work, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched, that something was playing a cruel joke on me. But the joke was far from over. As I trudged back home a few hours later, I launched into a full-blown search and rescue mission. I scoured every inch of my apartment, rechecked all the places I had already looked, and even enlisted the help of my chair, my bookshelf, and my carpet. Yes, I checked under the rug too, but still nothing. My glasses had vanished into thin air, leaving me with a gnawing sense of unease and a deepening feeling of frustration. As I slumped onto my couch, surrounded by the scattered remnants of my search, I couldn't help but wonder, where the hell are my glasses?
I'm still shaken as I recall the events of that fateful morning. My hands tremble with unease as I scribble down these words, hoping against hope that I'll find a rational explanation for what I witnessed. But deep within, a darkness brews, taunting me with the possibility that something sinister lurks in the shadows. It started with the school run, a routine I'd done countless times. But today, a sense of foreboding settled over me like a shroud as I navigated the two roundabouts, mere hundreds of yards apart. These roundabouts in the road had never been notable, except for their proximity to each other. That was until today. As I drove over the first roundabout, my eyes scanned the horizon, anticipating the familiar view of the approach to school. But something jarred my attention, like a misplaced note in an otherwise harmonious melody. A bunch of trees now sprouted from the roundabout, as if conjured from thin air. My mind recoiled in confusion, struggling to reconcile this sudden change. How had I missed them during the outward journey? Where had they come from? I harbored the same uneasy feeling as I approached the second roundabout. My gut twisted with trepidation, a shadowy intuition whispering that something was amiss. The trees materialized once more at the second roundabout, eerily silhouetted against the morning light. A sense of inevitability crept over me as I rationalized the sequences of events, the stark truth slowly dawning on me like a dark revelation. These trees weren't just innocent bystanders. I lurched the car into a U-turn, surrendering to the morbid fascination that had seized me. I had to see if my perceptions were playing tricks on me, or if this was something more. Retracing my route, I scrutinized the first roundabout with newfound intensity. That's when I noticed it. Those newly minted trees obscured the view toward my exit, which had always been a crystal-clear panorama. Panic seeped into my chest like ice water, infusing my very being with fear. How could this be? The unshakable feeling that something fundamental had shifted in the world unsettled me, leaving me grasp wildly for a lifeline of logic. Was I going crazy? Or was something truly hideously wrong? I sit in my car, paralyzed by a sense of foreboding, desperate for answers that seemed forever out of reach.
I'm writing this with a mix of frustration and unease, as my trusty memory card has suddenly stopped working. My dash cam is flashing an ominous message, demanding I format the SD card, and my phone won't even acknowledge its existence. It's as if all my memories are trapped, refusing to be set free. But it's not just my memories that are locked away. It's a peculiar encounter that has left me questioning everything. I was driving down a familiar road, the sun beating down on my windshield, when I spotted a strange car crawling along in front of me. Its unique design made it stand out like a sore thumb, a mashup of an old Land Rover and a makeshift armored vehicle, complete with steel bars bolted to the back. I was certain I'd never seen a car like it before, and my curiosity was piqued. I sped past the slower vehicle, eager to leave it in my dust. But little did I know, our encounter was far from over. Just a few minutes later, I pulled into the cookout drive-thru, hungry and ready for a quick bite. As I inched towards the ordering station, my eyes widened in shock. The same unmistakable car was now parked in front of me. I felt like I'd stumbled into a parallel universe. How was this possible? I quickly grabbed my phone, frantically searching Google Maps to see if there was some hidden route or shortcut that could have allowed this car to magically appear ahead of me. But the maps told a different story. There was no other way, no possible detour, that could have enabled this car to arrive at the cookout before me. And yet, here it was, taunting me with its impossible presence. A shiver ran down my spine as I processed the impossibility of it all. The driver, oblivious to my stare, continued to order their food, while I sat frozen in my car, my mind racing with questions. Was this some kind of coincidence? A prank gone wrong? Or was I just losing my grip on reality? The more I thought about it, the more my unease grew. Something wasn't adding up, and I was determined to get to the bottom of this bizarre encounter. But for now, my memories and my answers remained trapped, locked away on a malfunctioning memory card.